I think sometimes people don't consider the value that they actually bring to the world and how their creativity and their right brain actually supports that. I really believe that the more people lean into creativity and their natural gifts, and the more that they allow or create the support structures around that so that they can be creative, the more success that they will have always.
Hey, it's Renee. Welcome to the Into the Wild Show, the podcast for women who want to build incredible mental strength to level up their business and lifestyle. I'm Renee Warren, the founder of We Wild Women, author, speaker, award-winning entrepreneur, and your host. Together, we will make you unapologetic about shining your light, growing your business, and turning you into a wildly confident and successful leader. This is for you, the visionary, the go-getter, the entrepreneur, and for those that need a real kick in the butt to get going and to dream bigger. Each week, I bring in leading experts and entrepreneurs to help you take leaps in the right direction, because I know the best advice comes from someone who has successfully done it before. So, are you ready to level up? Welcome to Into the Wild. Hey, you wild women. I am so excited for this next guest because she's been a friend of mine for such a long time. We've met in cities all over the United States. And I finally got a chance to sit down with her and hang out with her actually for the whole afternoon because I was also on her show. Anyway, my next guest is an accomplished jewelry designer, entrepreneur, the host of the top-rated Thrive by Design podcast, and the author of The Desired Brand Effect. Stand out in a saturated jewelry market with a timeless brand. She's the Chief Visionary Officer of Flourish and Thrive Academy, their premier business and marketing education resource for jewelry makers and designers. Her passion to help leaders prevent burnout inspired the launch of Creatives Rule the World, where she hosts creativity and wellness retreats for entrepreneurs. Tracy's approach to business combines creativity, mindfulness, and mindset from her years as a yoga teacher in San Francisco and New York City, with practical and tactical marketing and business strategies that always work no matter how the industry or culture changes. She has been in so many publications, used to have her jewelry in over 350 retail specialty stores across the world, and was honored to be commissioned by Revlon to make a piece for Halle Berry's 20-year anniversary as the face of the brand. In this episode, we talk all things creativity, why it's important that every entrepreneur tap into the creative side. It's not about artistry necessarily. It's not about painting or making jewelry or fashion, but why finding space to get that creative side out of us is important in order to run our business. Please welcome the incredible Tracy Matthews.
Thank you so much for having me, Renee. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on.
I'm just like swinging in my chair.
I know, we're just dancing. We're letting it all out. I feel like we've been talking about this for so long, so it's finally nice to jump on and chat.
I'm excited.
How did we meet again?
Well, through Dan. So I met Dan at a business event. I was in a mastermind with Ryan Levesque, and they had a mixer. It was this event. There was a group of people talking. I walk up, Dan's there. We start talking. He's asking me a little bit about coaching. Then the phone rings, and it's you with your kids. He's like, excuse me, I need to go talk to my wife. So he walks away, comes back, and then he starts talking about how amazing his wife, Renee, is. And so then I don't even remember the first time that we actually met, because I don't think it was at that mastermind, maybe like an internet marketing party.
What about in New York at that lunch?
Oh, that's right.
Wasn't Selena Sue there?
Dinner. Yeah, that's where we met.
It was a dinner. That's what it was.
Everything starts to blur together after a while.
I know. Well, that's cool. And you were so brilliant. And what I love about you is, I know we don't talk about age, but it always blows my mind.
I'm an old lady. It's okay.
When you tell me how old you are, because I'm like, I always think you're way younger than me.
It's true. I'm 52. I'm an old lady. And it doesn't make sense because I didn't have kids. So I feel like I don't have the wrinkles that a lot of my friends have from being stressed out about their children. Now, I have Jason's kids that I kind of consider my stepkids, although we're not married. But I didn't have to keep them alive when they were infants. So that might have something to do with it.
Not even just like the looks, but just how you show up energetically and you're charismatic and you're always open and up for a good time. And I will say,
I'm a 7.
You're probably the most smiley person I know. Do you know how to not smile?
No. Can I tell you a funny story? I hate it when I'm getting a photo shoot or something like that. And they're like, oh, okay, do you like one of those smiles or one of those serious faces? Like you do it really well. I just saw your recent photo shoot. I look so dumb. I'm like, if I'm not smiling, I look dumb. When I was a kid, we had these neighbors. One of them called me Smiley. So that nickname kind of took. I don't know why.
That says so much about you. Imagine if more people had that, this world would be a different place.
It really would be. And there's a reason. Sometimes I laugh and smile at inappropriate times. Really inappropriate times. I can't say it on this podcast, but there was like one thing that happened on my team one time when I was just like really nervous and I started laughing and it came across so bad because someone was in a really bad spot that I was coaching on my team. And I'm just like, that didn't come across the right way. But
oh no,
yeah.
That's the worst. Sometimes it's like we don't know how we're going to react. Do we get a little awkward?
After I got divorced when I was in my 30s, I was going to therapy and I would tell my therapist like all these terrible things. And he's like, why are you laughing right now? And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know how to handle it. Maybe it's like my trauma response.
Right, totally. Because it could be a form of crying. It just comes out as a laugh. Okay, so let's get into this. The audience would love to know, what do you do?
So I do a lot of things. I'm basically like a warrior for creativity is kind of like what I like to think of myself as. I started out my career as a jewelry designer and I've been in the jewelry industry for, I don't know, gosh, well, I'm old. So I already told you that. Probably like for almost 30 years now. First started with the side hustle and then I had a full-time business where my jewelry was sold in over 350 stores around the world. I had all the press, all the things. 2008 happened and that took out the business. That's a long story, maybe a story for another time. But I had to reinvent myself in like 2010 and start over. So as I was kind of in this process of reinvention, I'm like, what can I do that still like really supported my creativity in the jewelry space, but also created the life that I wanted? Because that was really where I was struggling with that first business. I had all these goals for the business, but I wasn't really thinking about the impact of like working so hard in the business and how that would affect my life. And so I built this new business, a custom jewelry business where I designed fine jewelry, mostly engagement rings and wedding bands, and work with private clients, and built that as a lifestyle business to really support what I wanted to create in my life. And what I found is that when your business is in alignment with the goals that you have, what you want, how you want your life to look like, your creativity, all these things, number one, you're so much happier. Number two, you make so much more money. Like it's insane. Like the volume of that business is so much lower than my first company. And I took home like probably 10 times more money a year. And just like your overall enjoyment is, because I don't know about anyone listening here, but I don't think most people actually sign up to necessarily be a workaholic. It's awesome if you love what you do, but the reason why we work is to actually enjoy life. And so that led me on this path of mentoring jewelry business owners. And that's what I've been doing in addition to my jewelry company for the last 11 and a half to 12 years or so. I have a company called Flourish and Thrive Academy, and I support jewelry business owners and growing businesses that support their lifestyle goals. And as an offshoot of that, I launched a brand in 2008 called Creatives Rule the World. And I host creativity and wellness retreats for entrepreneurs and other people who just want to spend more time being in creative flow.
When did you start doing that?
The original concept happened in 2018. Took me a few years to like actually get the retreat thing off the ground, but I'll be hosting a retreat next year, which is exciting. Another one.
And you just did one, or you went to one. You didn't host one recently, or you did?
I did. So I had an event last week. This is more for Flourish and Thrive Academy as our mastermind and momentum coaching program.
Oh, that's so fun. So do you still design jewelry?
I do. My businesses, I like to say like I set up all these systems early on where I get a ton of traffic and stuff like that without having to think about it. So I don't really market the company, but I still am working on several projects a month. And it's awesome. I have someone in New York. I moved from New York to Arizona during the pandemic. And I have someone in New York who actually manages my production and does a lot of the work. So it's awesome because I can still do it on the side while I'm working kind of full-time in another business.
Because that's your passion. I love it. So I was reading your bio the other day, and there's the thing that stood out. And I'm really curious about how this all came to fruition. But you said that Revlon commissioned you to make a piece for Halle Berry's 20-year anniversary.
Isn't that cool?
How did that happen?
They emailed me. You know, it's really interesting. Like you're in publicity, so you get this.
Yeah.
And you've been doing it for a while. I mean, in the late 90s, you were probably in high school. I don't know. Is that true?
Yep. Just graduating, actually. I graduated in 1999.
Yeah. So I graduated at 89. in the late 90s and early 2000s, the way that you got exposure was getting your jewelry on celebrities. That was like a big
That
thing.
still works today, though, no?
It still works. I think it's different though, because it's more pay to play today. Then it would just be like a placement. You'd send stuff to a stylist. The celebrity would usually keep the jewelry and they'd wear it and get photographed. So Halle Berry actually bought some of my jewelry at one of my accounts, ABC Home, which was so cool. And the store called me. They're like, Halle Berry bought some earrings of yours. And so you know that you're like looking for the picture somewhere. I've got a snapshot of Us Weekly and put it in my media kit. And then I probably had it on my website somewhere. And so I think that they were looking like probably doing some search for jewelry designers. And my name came up in conjunction with that. So they reached out to me one day. This is probably like 5-6 years ago and asked me to design this commemorative piece. And I was like, I'm down. Like, let's do this. It was really cool. So we did something, I believe it was something that was like a variation on the Roman numeral 20 for her 20-year anniversary. It's a platinum and diamond necklace with champagne diamonds. It was really cool.
What was the 20-year anniversary of?
Her being like their spokesmodel.
What? She did it for 20 years?
Yeah. I mean, talk about another legend who looks crazy young. She's probably like 65. I mean, maybe not.
Some people just have it. I don't know. If I look at my mom, I'm like, and my grandma, I don't know. I don't have a chance. But hey, predatory. So that is cool. So then creating this commemorative piece is like, in my mind, a jewelry designer's dream.
Oh, it was so fun. There's a lot of pressure though. Because what if she doesn't like it? You're like,
And then what did it do for you career-wise afterward?
I didn't get a picture of her wearing that piece, unfortunately. Like, I don't know. I feel like celebrities sometimes get so many gifts from people. They're just like, oh, okay, thanks.
I know. I'm working with, I guess it's a celebrity. I don't know, influencer. Aren't they the same thing now? What's the difference between a celebrity and an influencer? That's a really good question.
I feel like a celebrity is someone who's in the movies or TV.
Probably.
And then an influencer is like someone who made themselves famous online.
But there's a influencer that I'm working with that has over 100 million followers across her social channels.
Oh, wow.
Posted stories on Instagram yesterday about all the gifts that she receives. And these are like not cheap gifts from fans.
Wow.
And I'm like, if anybody wants to send me like anything Gucci or like Saint Laurent, like my address in the bottom of my email newsletter. So if you subscribe to my newsletter, you can send me all this. But then it makes me think like, do they even appreciate these things? They have so much of it. It's got to be annoying at one point.
One of the ways that I got a lot of celebrity placements is that I had friends, because I lived in LA for a long time. I lived in LA and then San Francisco and New York. But when I was in LA in college and stuff like that, a lot of my friends from university went to the movie industry. And so I had some connections there. One of my friends, she now works for Disney. She's like the CMO for like one of Disney's affiliates or something like that. But she was working for Fox TV at the time. And American Idol was one of the shows that she managed. So she would just hook me up with the stylist. And she would say that they would get tons of boxes of swag for these celebrities. And the publicist would just go through them, start taking all the stuff.
Well, yeah, no crap.
Out of the boxes. Like it usually doesn't even get to the celebrity.
It's funny because I don't think my husband's a celebrity, but
he's kind of is.
He gets shipped stuff all the time. And whenever there's chocolate involved, it's mine. I don't care. He doesn't eat it. But unsolicited stuff, because there's enough of it, it hardly gets a wink. A lot of times it's a nuisance. And some of these packages are so beautiful. And the biggest shame is when people send stuff and they don't put who it's from.
They forget?
I don't know. We can never find it.
Can't even think of them.
I know.
What's the point?
And then some people send us stuff and Dan's like, do you know these people? I'm like, no, I don't. But all this to say, because gifting is a huge thing in PR.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing. But if it's unsolicited, it'll just get pushed aside or it'll get picked up by the publicist and nothing will come of it. And so like there's a whole part of this that goes into the effort of making sure that this is something that is welcomed, it is expected. So then when it does show up, there's an action that you want them to take as opposed to just being pushed to the side.
So did they ask Dan or did you ask this influencer to take a picture of the gift or put it on or whatever? Is that like the exchange? No?
For Dan? No, because he puts on the bottom of his newsletter his mailing address, which you have to anyways. But also on his website, he says, if you want to mail me anything, you got to take that off.
Is he looking for free stuff? Dan, we love you.
No,
but seriously.
I don't know. I don't know why. Some of the stuff we get is like crazy awesome. But then I can't tell you how many sets of tea we have now.
Are you worried about people just showing up at your house?
But it's not our house. It's our P.O. box.
Okay. So that's okay.
Nowhere near us.
Okay, good.
No. But yeah.
I'm like, because that's a real
No.
risk. I'm just telling you.
Totally a real risk. Yeah, no. It's a P.O. box. And I say this to all entrepreneurs is you never have your home mailing address to be your business address. Don't put those two together. Here's the reality. We are creeping up on the end of 2023, which means that we are planning all things PR and marketing for 2024. I really hope you had the chance to attend the workshop I did the other week called the Preloaded Marketing Year. If you haven't, you can jump onto our Facebook group. It's a wild Facebook group. We're going to put the link below, and you can join the group in order to access the replay. And it's an hour-long workshop. I talk about all things creating a year-long marketing calendar and how to work backwards from there without overwhelm. Now, if you're like, Renee, I ain't got the time for this. I just need to hire somebody that can help me do this. Well, you've come to the right place. As you may know, I offer a couple programs. I have my Sidelines to Headlines PR Retainer program, as well as my Authority Booster Intensive, which is a VIP day. We do have one opening coming January for the retainer-based program, and we have a couple days left for the Authority Booster Intensive program, which is your VIP day. If you head over to wewildwomen.com, you can check it out. Otherwise, follow me on Instagram, Renee_Warren, to learn about all things PR, and feel free to jump into my DMs to ask me any questions. Okay, so let's get back to business here. Let's talk about creativity because you are a very inspiring woman.
Well, thank you.
Super creative. And I have a question about creativity. So why do you think creativity is the biggest asset for entrepreneurs and in their life?
I mean, there's so many reasons, but the first is this. Do you know what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is?
Yeah.
It's like a pyramid. If I could share a screen, I could share a thing, but Google it if you don't know what that is. Anyway, it's a path to like getting your needs met as a human being. And at the top of that pyramid is self-actualization. And inside that the little top triangle are things like creativity, which is at the top of it. And so creativity is one of the fastest paths to self-actualization and understanding not only who you are as a person, but also bringing your gifts and arts into the world. And when we were kids, we were highly creative. I mean, do you remember when your boys were like really little? Were they like coloring and creating like fantasy stuff all the time?
They still do that. Yeah. I mean, I suppose 10 is still kind of little.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We're so creative when we're kids. And some people end up leaning into that and it's like valued by their parents. And some people it's not. And they're like, go study, study, study. And they, in a lot of instances and cultures, the creativity is sort of like taught away. And there's a song, I think, by a band called Travis that says something like, you know everything when you're born and then they teach it all away. Yeah. And I feel that way sometimes about creativity. So the reason why I think creativity is so important is because, number one, it is the core of all the ideation and strategic energy that you bring to your business. And so it is one of the fastest paths to fulfillment and creating positive outcomes for anything that you're doing. And it's, I think, one of the biggest lenders and supporters for problem solving in anything that you have. And then on obvious levels, like creativity allows you to make beautiful things, write beautiful things, say beautiful things. Like it's just really that energy behind growth, flow, and ideation for a business owner. And really, quite frankly, for anyone.
Totally. Have you done The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron?
A long time ago. I haven't done it recently, but I should like do it again.
I did it a year ago-ish, but it was one of the end points of a 5-year journey in, quote, finding myself.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it in that book, she says that God's gift to you is to be an artist.
Yeah.
Basically, you have to be of service to God to find your artistry and that creative path to give back to the world, to give back to God. And that was powerful.
It's so powerful. And I so believe that. You know, it's so crazy because people say all the time, like, I'm not creative at all. And I don't believe that. I think everyone has their own creative gifts. In like 2006 or 7, my friend Art came into my jewelry studio when I was in New York. And he was helping me build out some financial models. Like he was in finance, like he was doing financial models like all day long. And he's asking me some questions. He's walking around my studio and he's like, oh my gosh, you're so creative. I don't have a creative bone in my body. And he comes back like a couple days later and still the same thing, like, you're so creative, like all this stuff. He starts walking me through this financial model. I'm like, how in the heck did you do that? Like, that's creative. I think sometimes people don't consider the value that they actually bring to the world and how their creativity and their right brain actually supports that. I really believe that the more people lean into creativity and their natural gifts, and the more that they allow or create the support structures around that so that they can be creative, the more success that they will have always.
So true. And it got me thinking, what is your definition of creativity?
Oh gosh. To me, it's like when you're in that energy, and I'm calling it energy because it can be a lot of different things, right? Of just like being in flow, of feeling fulfilled, of coming up with amazing ideas, developing art, all these things, bringing beauty into the world. I think what it really comes down to is kind of being in that energy of flow state, like where you just feel like time and space and like everything starts to melt away and you're just coming up with something and you're just like, how did that come about?
Do you think that we've mislabeled the word creativity?
I do. I mean, I haven't really thought about it that way. I think that people think of creative people as artists, and that's not necessarily what creativity
like a painter
is.
or a jewelry designer.
I have this painting I did. It's not in this room. It's in the other room of my work apartment. But people like come in here or they're like, I'm on a Zoom or something. They're like, oh, wait, who made that painting? I want to get it. And I'm like, I did. They're like, oh, like that's what they think of as like a creative person. My creativity is like actually really expressed mostly in like how I coach my students, the ideas I come up with to grow my business, the way I solve problems. That's when I feel like the most creative.
Yeah, like systems designs, program designs,
all that stuff.
How you lay your furniture out in the house.
It's like self-expression. Maybe that's like another thing. It's like your form of self-expression, like how you express yourself into the world. Yeah.
That's totally it. That means that even an accounting nerd can be a creative because they look at numbers as art. And they're like, 100%. I love a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I 100% support that statement.
I'll go into like buildings, or sometimes when I have a problem falling asleep, I calm myself by redesigning buildings, redesigning like entrance ways. Yeah, this is a crazy thing. I feel like I was actually a former FBI agent, but I think there's like an architectural.
You're kind of a badass.
It started with my kids' old daycare when we were living in San Diego. And I'm like, man, that is like such a great flow. Why can't all buildings be like that? The way that you drop your kid off, sign them in, and leave. Have you ever been, maybe you haven't, but the Disney cruises?
Oh, yeah. I've never been on a Disney cruise.
Half of the Lido deck, whatever the deck is that they're on, is for the kids club. And it's like super security, right? And the kids have these bracelets they can't take off so that you can track them on your app. But when you go to drop them off, they have these two little holes where you put your hand in and it sanitizes your hands, it washes your hands, and then it dries them so that you go in with clean hands and then you scan your kid in. It's like a system. And I'm like, that is super creative because they got to optimize for is sanitization and security. But there's enough people coming and going with their kids that they have to make it seamless. Like Disney, they get it. They're super creative on so many levels.
Of course they are.
But when it comes to business, the creativity can be expressed in ways like maybe it is an awesome financial model for your business. And it might not
my brain's not making a financial model. We need someone to do it.
I'm not doing it. No, I will color code the lines though, but I won't
I'll do that too. I'll put like the freeze on it. I can add one row at a time. I can't do the crazy formulas, but just like
filters. I had one woman come in. She was like, someone I had hired to do some sort of pitching with me. And she's like, it's really bugging me. Can I update your spreadsheets? Like, I don't really want you to touch. And then she just went in and just like in 2 seconds, like added these filters and these funnels. And I was like, whoa, I'd never seen it before. And it's so cool.
Spreadsheet masters like blow my mind.
So talking about creativity, and you say it's a self-expression, it's when you're in flow. But we often hit these, what we call writer's blocks, or moments where we're like stuck. What do we do now? I can't think. How do I self-express? What are some tips on getting out of that rut?
That's a great question. I think that all of us experience that. And I usually think that the reason why that happens is because we're not allowing ourselves the space, time, and energy to actually be creative. I don't know about you, but like we were talking a little bit before, and you're talking about how you're like building your pipeline or whatever for your publicity company and all that stuff. And when you're in a really busy time with work, it's like task. You're just like scheduled to the hilt. And there's no space to think. And then you're frustrated because you're like in this granular moment, like I can only focus on the things in front of me instead of thinking about stuff, right? And then we sit down, we're like, oh, I have to write that email or come up with an idea for my program design or design a piece of jewelry or whatever it might be, design a spreadsheet. And you're sitting there and you're trying to decompress for a long time from all this other stuff that you're doing. And maybe you have an hour. It's just like not enough time to be able to get back into that zone. And so when you land in a creative rut or a writer's block or something where you aren't feeling that flow of creativity, you have to figure out how to get out of it. And now one of the things that I remember reading a book a long time ago, I can't even remember which book it was, but in that book, they talked about how Google, they told their employees that one day a month that you had a day to just do whatever you wanted, any project you wanted to work on. I then decided to take that concept and do it once a week for myself. And I started calling it Creative Day. I don't know what they call it. Maybe they called it Creative Day too. I don't know. But it was a time and space to not have any agenda, but to just get out of your own way and work on the things that you wanted to work on. And so when you are in a creative rut or you feel out of flow, what you have to do is give yourself that time and space to get back into the energy of creativity. And if you're stuck, some of the ways to do that are through different art forms. First and foremost, you need the time and space. So whether it's a day, a week, a month, everyone's got like different things that they're trying to create, right? You need to get into your body usually. So movement helps, like whether you're someone who likes to exercise or lift weights, or you want to go dance or do yoga or something like that. Some of my best ideas, I used to teach yoga like in another lifetime, in this lifetime, but in another lifetime, another decade maybe. I would get the best ideas for everything in business when I was just sitting on the mat. And it's like a time when you're not supposed to be thinking about that stuff. But the reason why it works is because you're not pushing yourself to try to think about the thing or create the thing that you're trying to do. So getting into your body can be super helpful. Having new experiences and doing something that's completely unrelated to like what you're trying to do can help get you back into that creative energy. I like doing retreats and going away. That's one of the reasons why I host these creativity and wellness retreats, because as business owners, we're so busy freaking running our businesses that we don't often take the time to take care of ourselves, right? And so one of the ways that people can do that is go find a group or a mastermind or some space that you can go to get away from your business so that you actually will take the time to think about your business and reconnect to it. And Dan talks about this in his book, but it's another thing that I really focus on too, is having themed days or days that you only focus on certain tasks during the week, because that context switching thing that a lot of people talk about is a real thing. So if you're trying to do a sales call, which you may have done today, and then back that up with a podcast interview and then go back to doing sales calls, like it's hard to get in the flow of either.
Today's a batch
Try
day.
to like batch your days of the types of things that you're doing. So like one day a week for meetings, one day a week for calls, one day a week for coaching or whatever you do, one day a week for like big picture strategy, or months, break out your months. I don't know. So that's what works for me.
We hosted a preloaded marketing year workshop this week, which feels like a week ago. This was 2 days ago.
I want to go to one of those at some point.
I just taught people how to take their entire year and preload it with the big events. These are like launches, announcements, and then you work in what are called 3-month intervals or 12-week intervals, where it's like a quarter.
Yeah.
So it's like, you have this big goal for the year and all these things happening, but chunk it up into 3 months, because then working on bite-sized versions of one big task is easier to swallow.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
The thing I loved about this is, so going back to what you were saying, is my assistant knows when I'm on a walk or a hike because she gets all the Voxers.
Yeah, she's like, wait, what's going on?
Like, Renee must be hiking. It's like a million things. But I also have an electric drum set that sits right next to me to my left.
You play the drums? Oh my God, I love you more. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Renee, you know that my secret fantasy is to be the lead singer in a band, but my second secret fantasy is to be the lead singer in a band and the drummer.
So play drums and sing at the same time?
Yeah, like Phil Collins.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, you can totally be like Phil if you want to. So total sidebar on this, but talk about creativity. A couple years ago, actually it was the fall going into the pandemic. So 2019, when I started to take drum lessons. It was only that long ago. And my husband is very like, what's the objective of the thing you're doing? There's always has to be like, what is the outcome? Like, I just want to take drum lessons. Why?
Like, why does it matter?
Why? So finally I decided, you know what, let's try this out. Maybe I want to be on stage someday. Well, there's a guy in Moncton, New Brunswick, on the east coast of Canada, who puts on these, like, I guess, smaller versions of Cirque du Soleil. And he's been doing it for a while. And they're really beautiful performances. I'd been to a few. And I said, you know what? Maybe one day I will be on his stage and I will play drums. And I envisioned me on these big drums with another woman next to me. And we're dancing through a segment on these drums. And it's part of the show.
How fun.
And I envisioned it and I made this so clear. And then I said, I'm going to reach out to Matt, who puts this entire production on.
Stop it.
And I said, Matt, this is crazy, but I have an idea. Can I come meet you? So he brings me into his office and it's just floor to ceiling costumes. And like, you think walking into a Cirque du Soleil change room, like that's what it was like. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I've never performed anything. He doesn't even know I play drums. And I was like, so Matt, I started taking drum lessons a couple months ago and I want to play on your stage. And he's like, okay. Oh no, you're not supposed to say yes. You're supposed to say no. Who are you?
What happened?
Well, we got into talking about what the story was and the storyline and what it would look like. And all these things happened. Then COVID happened and everything was shut down. And so it's still a dream of mine to perform drums with another woman next to me. So if you want to come and just play drums with me, we can go on a tour if you want.
That would be amazing. We could be like Sheila E.
We're just like, yeah, I don't know. But what I loved about it is like that self-expression.
Yeah.
And like you really do need to give your brain a time to pause. And when you learn a new language, instruments are a new language, it actually opens up new neural pathways.
It does.
So you become smarter by trying something new.
Yeah.
Cal Newport, oh my gosh, I hope that's his name. He says that most people only have the capacity for creative work in 57-minute intervals.
Interesting.
So to say that you can just sit at your desk for 8 hours and be the most productive version of yourself is a lie.
Yeah.
Yet we are forced into these confines of what an 8-hour day should look like, 40 hours a week. That's the most productive version of you, which I call bullcrap on. And it's just exhausting.
Exactly.
When was the last time you worked like a super crazy week?
Well, last week, because I had my event.
That's an anomaly though.
Yeah.
Like in a normal week.
I would say that I have them. It's usually during our launches. And it's usually when I'm on camera, like for 3 hours a day for 5 days straight. Those are hard because it's like you're on camera doing the thing and then recapping with the team, like improving the strategy, getting more stuff done.
And you're batching podcast recordings now, right?
Yeah, I've been doing that for a long time.
That's always blows my mind. So explain to me how you do that.
What I prefer to do, it doesn't always work out that way because like it seems like I've had a hard time like wrangling some of the guests I want to get on. They are a little sporadic. But in an ideal world, what I would do is batch a day and I would record 5 to 6 podcasts in one day and then get them all to my team, record the intros and outros. My podcast is usually about 30 minutes. And so if we schedule an hour, we have like a little time to talk before, record the thing, then I can get the intro and outro done right after the interview. And then I try to do those like once a month or once every 6 to 8 weeks, depending on how many people I'm interviewing. Like I go in seasons with my podcast of doing solo shows versus interviews. So there's like a mix of both. But that's how I do it. It works really well for me because I used to do this thing where it would just be like, here are the days of the week that I would record a podcast. And then it would be hard to plan because then at the last minute, someone would book a time and then it kind of derailed the other thing that I was going to do that day.
My cleaning lady was a saving grace because I used to record everything on Thursdays, but in the PR world, that's a prime pitching day. So I really have to guard my days. Like Wednesday, Thursday are the best days. A little bit Tuesday too, but Mondays and Fridays are great. So we did this month, it's October at the time of this recording, and we did a Master Your Marketing Mindset series. So because I had a theme, I preloaded all the guests that I wanted and like the topics to talk about. So we were recording stuff in August to be ahead of the game so that by the time September came, all the content for October was done.
Oh, amazing.
So like thinking ahead.
Do you plan your podcast? Like you don't plan it that far in advance?
Well, I do. For the most part, the stuff that we're recording now gets published in a month.
Yeah.
But I'd love to be
good.
like a couple months ahead.
That would be the dream. Here's the thing. I go through seasons of having like 3 months recorded in advance. And then like yesterday I was recording something for next week because it was like, I wanted to do a recap of my event. And then a guest I was going to have on fell through. So I had to move them out of the spot. I try to get ahead too, but sometimes you have to be flexible. That's another thing about creativity. You just have to like roll with things sometimes and not be so structured.
Oh, I know. And then we decided to do interview-based only and then add a second episode a week for solo episodes. So for the past 3 months, I've been doing 2 a week. The solo episodes I find are easier to manage because it's just like you talk about the stuff you're good at and you just download a couple. But still, those have been the worst ones for me to record.
Why?
Because I have to rely on myself to show up to record.
Oh, you're such a badass though.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, I love this. Okay. So the topic of the show that I want to talk about is building a creative business that doesn't trap you. So when it comes to the importance of creativity beyond just being like creating the beauty of like the work that we do, how do we build businesses that don't trap us?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. First, you have to be really clear on, people say this all the time, like the why you're doing this, but like, what are the motivations that you want to reach your goals? And like, I think about it like this. I'm going to go back to what I talked about at the beginning of the episode. The reason why a business feels like it's a trap to certain people is because it's not supporting the life you want. So if you're building a business just based solely on revenue or what you think you should have, and you're not really taking consideration into like what kind of time you need off work or how much money you need to be taking home or whatever those things are, it can easily create this trap around you. And so my biggest suggestion is to get really clear on like what you want to create for your personal life and like what you want that to look like and get really clear on it. Like my favorite thing to do is like visioning exercises, like with people. It's like really help them paint the picture of what that looks like, to visualize it to get into that feeling state of what it would feel like to have that already. And then go back and like have that in your mind and then say like, okay, well, how does the business support that? Here's the thing. We are human beings. We are complex. There are going to be many times when you feel trapped in your business. The most important thing to do when you feel trapped is to acknowledge that you're trapped and figure out, how did this happen and how do I get out of it, right? From there, especially if you understand like why those personal goals are important, it can be really easy to unwind that. You know, if you have programs or stories or anything like that that's working in the background that's kind of like creating this trap for you, get the help from someone who's skilled at therapy or something like that to help you remove that stuff, because it's going to just keep following you no matter what. If you don't clear it, you're going to be like in a trauma bond relationship with your business or whatever the thing is forever until you understand what that is. I know that sounds really woo and weird, but it's the truth. I could tell you stories about how I've created this trap for myself. And then the next thing is, you know, this is really interesting. I mentioned earlier that I just had a retreat here for my coaching program in Arizona. One of the speakers, she came up, someone asked her a question along the lines of like, what are the best steps, like if you're feeling burned out, to like get out of that to reach a big goal? Something like that. The topic was burnout and overwhelm. And she's like, you know, I was working with a coach one time. Her name is Kate Byers. I want to give her credit for this. I was working with a coach one time and, you know, I had this big goal. I was feeling really burned out, but I had this big goal. I wanted to make $6 million in my business. And she's like, okay, so why do you want to reach that? She's like, well, because I want to do this thing with my kid. That would give me the resources to live in a month on an island and to do this and that and this. And the coach said to her, she's like, well, why don't you just start doing those things now instead of when you reach the goal and see what happens? And she said that year, at the end of the year, she ended up reaching her goal of $6 million in revenue in her business. The thing that everyone in the room, the reason why they thought that was so powerful and what my huge take home of this is, we're like putting our life on hold to reach some like esoteric goal that may or may not happen. And a lot of times we end up becoming workaholics and like doing all this stuff in our business and trapping ourselves into this rut of like just working harder instead of being smart about what we're doing. But what if we were to just do the thing and see what would happen? And maybe everything else would fall into place. And I'm totally guilty of this. I think that we probably only need to do probably about 50% of the work that we're doing in our company to really make a difference. The rest of it is just like not really getting utilized anyway.
Well, it's like the pressure thing. Like if you're only given a certain amount of time to complete a task, you're going to use that time to complete the task. So like I always use this example. If I give you 2 hours to write me a blog post, you'll take 2 hours. But if I give you 2 weeks, you'll take 2 weeks.
Exactly.
And there's a term for this, but I forget what it's called.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Not the Pareto principle.
It is the Pareto principle. 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your marketing initiatives. So why are we filling the blanks of our day with stuff that just is meaningless?
Yeah. We should all just schedule 1 hour a day of work and see what we get done.
I dare you. What would you do? Wow, I can't even think about that because, Anyway, we just have to hire a lot of assistants. Okay, I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
What does that mean? To be creative, and to live a life that's like on purpose and free, just to enjoy the journey.
Well, Tracy, if anyone wants to go find you online, where can they go to find you?
They can find me over at creativesruletheworld.com. You can also find me on my podcast, Thrive by Design, and over on social media at Tracy Matthews NY.
Woohoo! Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
So there you have it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Into the Wild. To make this girl happy and to help reach other women who are dreaming of starting their business, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes and everywhere you listen in. Also, if you want to find me in the wild, check me out on Instagram at Renee_Warren. That's RENEE_WARREN. And leaving you with one of my favorite tips of all time: the best advice you could ever receive is from someone who has successfully done it before you. Until next time, ladies, peace out.